I know that they just want me to reach my full potential, and that wasn't going to happen there. So I had to then make sacrifices for whatever my future family and my future requires of me. And so it was incredibly scary because I live off of stability. And it was hard to walk away from money. That's what will get you too, is like how much money you can make in that world. And I, at 26, was doing very well. And so
welcome to the Full Fueled Podcast. Welcome to the Full Fueled Podcast. Welcome to the podcast with your host, Matt Tack, with your host, Matt Tack.
Your host, Matt Tack.
Who are you?
I'm Dr. Alfred Alessi.
Dr. Alfred Alessi.
Dr. Alfred Alessi.
They know by now, bro. They know by now.
I'm going to set what the new normal looks like in my life.
You're not limited by your genetics.
You have a superpower that is lifting people up. Dude, you look real.
The only way we're going to get the word out is with you. Live full fueled, live beyond limits, baby. Let's go.
All right. Welcome back to Full Fueled.
Your host,
Your host, Matt Tack and Dr. Alfred Alessi. We're here with season 2, ramping it up. Phenomenal guest today, Alexa Nejaime, the host of the Minutes of Positivity podcast. We're going to be talking about quitting your job, the 9-to-5 grind, going entrepreneur, what the hustle looks like, keeping that positive mindset, and all things health, wellness, and positive thinking. Right?
Positivity.
Thank you for being on the show today.
thank you for having me. This is my first podcast interview. I'm usually on the other side, so this is really cool. So
we'll keep it casual.
You're the interviewer.
Yeah, I'm not used to that.
Seats today. Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your podcast, kind of the focus, and what you're doing with it all.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Massachusetts. I moved to Tampa about 4 years ago. And I started the podcast about 4 years ago. And so, or about 3 years ago. And I really just wanted a space where we could tell stories. That was the motive behind it, was like, I just want a space where people can come on and share their stories about life. And I had gone through some things in mine where I was like, people could relate to this. This is a great idea. And then as I started doing it, I realized that I just was not in a great headspace. And so I felt like a fraud almost, because I was promoting all this positivity and trying to put all these incredible people on my podcast when I just wanted to crawl into bed and not talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And so it felt, what was supposed to be really enjoyable to me felt so much like a chore that I decided I'll just take a little bit of a break from it. And then 2 years went by. And so I just relaunched it with a completely different mindset, a completely different intention, and I feel incredible about it now than I did before.
Yeah, that's cool. Eric Thomas, you ever heard of the hip hop preacher?
Mm-mm.
Oh, dude, he's cool. But anyways, pick up where you left off.
Yeah.
Like that's such a cool concept, because if it does take 2 years, it's like, yeah, 2 years went by, but so what? Pick up where you left off, and that's what you're doing. I love that.
And timing is everything, and I think that I know there was a reason I had taken that time off. It might not have made sense to me then. However, now looking back, I'm like, oh, thank God I took that time, because I don't know that I would have been equipped for what's coming had I stayed in it. Whereas I took time to get to know myself, take care of myself, heal a little bit, get healthy. And now I'm like, I'm mentally, physically, spiritually prepared for wherever this podcast could actually take me.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes you have to take a break from something to come back stronger, just like working out, just like, you take a couple weeks off from the gym and I feel stronger going back. This is no different. It happened to be 2 years.
Sometimes you got to hit that reset a little bit. And
yeah.
Again, like the timing, maybe 2 years ago, if you would have tried to like push through it and force it, right? Square peg round hole kind of thing. You're trying to make something work that's not like ready for it or at that time, and then maybe you would have quit, right? Like maybe you wouldn't be here today doing it. So
right.
Good job for listening to like kind of your internal voice and following that. Yeah, for sure. I think we all got to be better about doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was still in my corporate job too, which was a big.
So you're trying to do two things.
So I was where I had to be present for both, and they both needed my attention, and my corporate job was not a place where I was happy anymore. And so it was trickling into those other things. And I think when that starts to happen, it's really hard to continue to put yourself into, like, I couldn't see the opportunities that were coming anymore. I was checked out.
Yeah, tell us about that. So what did you do for a corporate job?
I worked for a pharmaceutical company in the compliance department. I was one of their lead investigators. So we made the drugs in the manufacturing. We had the manufacturing building. And so we would manufacture the drugs. And so my job was to investigate when something went wrong. And then I had to sit with the client and basically tell them that, there's a hair in the vial and this is why. And, I just got yelled at a lot. I wasn't the person they liked. And then lunch would happen and we'd be having lunch and they'd be different people. And then lunch would go away and they'd be like, so why was the hair there? Did you put it there? I'm like, I didn't put the hair there. Like, I'm not in there.
Yeah.
So I was just this messenger that they killed the messenger.
You had to go in there with the bad news. You're always looking for a problem.
Always looking for a problem and always looking for a solution. And it's exhausting because you're like, even when you find the solution, something else happens. And you're like, okay, so we're back here again. But I was good at it. And I have a master's degree in health administration. And so I definitely have a passion for healthcare. And I just think it looks different now. And how I'll pursue that looks different now.
It sounds kind of like what I've heard from you and just us chatting a little bit is like, you put all this time into school and your life and learning and you're kind of told the next step is you get a job and you go out into the world and you just do these things that are expected of you. And you were like, not working. I'm done with that.
Yeah.
How scary was that, right? Because a lot of people can't even fathom that idea. And that's why they stick in an unhappy place for their entire lives, right?
Sure.
Then they get to the end, they're like, what did I just do? What did I waste this entire thing? So
it was terrifying, to say the least, because I put myself through my master's and I'm a first generation. So I was really nervous to tell my family, like, oh, by the way, because you don't, when you're a first generation, I think a lot of people can appreciate this. You don't have many options. My father is an immigrant who came from Lebanon to put me through school and do those things. And I was nervous to tell him, hey, gonna switch some things up,
Yeah.
But I think when I finally decided that it was time to walk away, it didn't matter what anyone was going to tell me, because at that point I was 26 and I felt like I was 45. I felt miserable. And I thought to myself, if I continue down this path, what do the next 20 years look like? And so I know the sacrifices that my parents made to give me the life that I have. And I know that they just want me to reach my full potential, and that wasn't going to happen there. So I had to then make sacrifices for whatever my future family and my future requires of me. And so it was incredibly scary because I live off of stability. And it was hard to walk away from money. That's what will get you too, is like how much money you can make in that world. And I, at 26, was doing very well. And so to think about walking away from financial stability, it was like, oh, I'm making it really, this is crazy. And it was the best thing I ever did. So as scary as it was the best thing I could have done.
That is the thing about entrepreneurism, is that it isn't for everybody. Yeah. It's a scary, scary walk when you walk into it. It's like the first day, you're like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to quit my job. Yeah. I did that. And so I like my first day, I'm like in my late 20s and I'm trying to like, what do I do now? I didn't have like, I kind of had the side hustle, but I was just getting into real estate a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, this is weird. Like I have a little bit of time, but then there's also that breathing component. I can breathe. Like actually time is on my side now.
Yep.
And then like I can best utilize it the way I want to.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's one of those like dynamics that it's this shift. It's this like, complete culture shift.
Totally.
Because you do have a lot of stability, structure. Somebody else is paying you a paycheck, but now you got to go eat.
You got to find it.
You got to go. You definitely got to go find it. That's cool. I got a question for you though, because I'm so interested on the dynamic then. If you're second generation, so your parents were first generation.
No, I'm first.
You're first. I'm sorry, but they were immigrants. They came over here.
My father, yes.
Okay. So are they entrepreneurs? What did they do when they came from Lebanon?
So my dad, I guess you could say to some degree, he owns or owned a restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
totally.
now, so he has a Lebanese restaurant in Massachusetts, and he has been in the restaurant industry. He's a phenomenal cook. Absolutely can take 3 ingredients out of your pantry and make a 4-course meal.
I need some fattoush salad right now.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm freaking hungry. Yeah.
That's amazing.
We're going to Massachusetts.
Yeah, right. And I'm telling you, it's the best. And so I watched my whole life, watched him work to the ground. You know, like I didn't see my dad a lot growing up in the way that, you know, he would wake us up coming home late, waking us up to take us back to the house. And it was, he worked a lot, and he didn't trust anybody else to cook the food the right way and everything like that. And now he does all these farmers markets, and he makes pita chips, and he is doing phenomenal. So it's such a blessing. So yeah, he technically is kind of an entrepreneur in his own way.
And that's so cool, because we talked about this in our last podcast, right? I had to reflect just this morning. I reflected on this as far as they had a dream. So they had a dream to come from Lebanon to the United States. They wanted to raise their family here, hence you. And like just taking a moment to kind of reflect on that as your parents, like, are they living out their dream, right? Whether or not like he planned, you know, that's what he had to do to survive for the family. But he instilled that in you, and that direct reflection was like, thank you. Like, it's almost like at a level of appreciation. And I was just saying that my parents are school teachers, but I was like, if I had to ask them, like, we were middle income class, like I said it in a prior episode, but they were living that out. Like, my dad was a basketball coach, loved the game of basketball. My mom was a reading specialist, just loved teaching. And it was just a different level of success for them.
Sure.
But they lived their dream, and then they showed me that. I became an entrepreneur because I'm like, look, I got to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And that's where you're at, and your dad, you really, like, your parents instilled that because they made that choice. Do you see it that way?
I guess I didn't necessarily look at it that way, but now that you say that, probably to some degree, I definitely have asked people, my parents and my aunts and my uncle, like, what they would do if they weren't in their current job. And sometimes it's different than what they're doing, you know? And I always wonder if that was something that they would ever go back to or not. I do come from a family of business owners. My mom's family owns car dealerships. So they all built the car dealerships from the ground up. So I grew up in that and watching my uncles, my grandfather, my uncles create an incredible business selling cars, and they're very well known in Connecticut for that. So I guess I definitely get my work ethic and my drive from watching both of my family members, both sides of my family, and how they have definitely gone through ups and downs and have pushed. So I for sure have had really great examples of, even though it's hard, you get up and you keep going. And you stay true to yourself and you keep going. So I definitely have had great examples, thankfully.
And it's not like you had to do this, right? Like, you could have just kept that job, and it's easier to collect a check and just kind of listen and, say yes or no, sir, that kind of thing, right?
Totally.
But
you know what's
kind of
funny about that
trail, right?
And I would have climbed the ladder. There's no doubt about that, because I just know myself. I would have been like, okay, well, it's time to get into a manager role. And then I originally wanted to run a hospital. That was the whole reason I got my master's degree. I was like, I'm going to be the CEO of a hospital. And then I sat down with the CEO of a hospital, and he made a lot of great points. I had breakfast with him, and I thought,
how happy was he?
Yeah, that's interesting. It put into perspective.
Yeah.
I said, you know what, but I'm different. And so I was like, I'll keep trying. And then I went into the prison systems and did my internship inside the prison systems to bring those two together, healthcare and correctional facilities.
I saw that on your profile.
And
yeah.
And so then I was like, can I do something with this? And I started to, and I still think I will do something. I know I will do something with healthcare and criminal justice and prison reform. It just looks different from a different, I wanted my job to be different. I wanted to wake up and like what I do if it's going to be something I have to do every single day. So that was really what it was. But I absolutely, it would have been easier to sit there and just keep working away, and then I don't know who I would have become then. And I don't know that I would have liked that person, because I didn't really like her at 26. I wasn't going to like her at 36 or 46.
Yeah, that's so.
And that freaked me out.
This is like I think of these things in really like kind of deep thought, because, you know, the generation, especially somebody that's an immigrant. So my wife, her dad was an immigrant from Ecuador. He's an entrepreneur. And I've learned a lot from him, but it's always to make your kids' lives easier, right? You're working so that like they can have an easier life, but the becoming of them, you don't see the becoming of them. Like, you're making a decision because you want to narrate your story.
Totally.
Whereas like, that's not really what your parents probably had envisioned. They're like, actually, we're just trying to make life a little easier for you. How about you just keep the job?
Yeah.
Or because I want to make your life a little bit easier. But the reality is when you can go through a little bit of the mud, was when your story becomes a little bit better. And so that's kudos to you. That's awesome.
Thank you. And I will say, my parents, when I think because I was 26 and not 21 or 18, coming to them and saying, I want to be an actress, I want to try this, I want to, you know, maybe start my podcast again. I think I could really it was almost like she knows what she wants at this point. There's nothing. And so thankfully, both my parents and my family have been incredibly supportive of my decision and have continued. I think they also are now seeing it in action in a way that, because it's taken a little bit, you know, I'm now 28. So it's taken 2 years to get to this moment, which I've prayed to get here. So I'm like, I know where I'm going, but I've waited to get to this moment. So I'm going to enjoy this moment. And so I think they're seeing the progress as well. And I know that they're proud of me and want me to keep going. So that's, at least it does help, because it can be hard if you don't have any type of support system.
That can help big time when you maybe have that self-doubt, right? Or you kind of start to kind of like question, oh shit, should I have done this? You know, like
there were so many times last year where I was like, I ruined my life. I ruined my life. Like, this is crazy. Because I think what you said before, it was like you get to breathe when you quit.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm just taking like a vacation. I'll go back, you know? And then I was like, oh no, I quit. Like, I cannot go back. I sent my computer. Like, I don't have health insurance anymore. What am I, you know? And so I had to find all those things and figure it out. And I had to go get another job I just didn't ever anticipate having to do again. That was outside of that world, you know? And it's hard, because it's so much easier to be like, I have a master's and brag and I have a good job. It's when you leave it that people are like, what are you doing? Yeah. Why would you do that?
It's so different from the norm, right?
Right.
That's kind of what we were talking about, right? So like,
and it's scary to them. Yeah. So therefore they tell me that they project it onto me.
100%.
And so then, of course, for about a year, I internalized that. I think I needed that year to kind of spiral so that I could come to where I am now of like, yeah, I'm good. I got it. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Gotta get through the mud, dude.
You gotta get through the mud.
Yeah. And the mud is super scary. Super dark.
Super dark.
It's really dark.
I can relate in a way, because, you know, like, I was 18 when I told my dad, like, hey, I don't want to work for you, right? So like, my dad built this like empire of a company that his dad started when he emigrated from Italy, from Sicily. And so, you know, big family company, almost everyone in the family works there. Like, my brother works there. I'd been working there since I was 12, you know, in the factory in the summers and stuff. So I knew, you know, that was kind of like a shoe-in for me. I was like, I can just do this, right? But I just didn't. There's just something about me that was just different. I didn't see myself going that route. I love sports. I love fitness. I wanted to be in the health space. And so like, having that conversation with my dad, like, hey, I'm going to do something else, you know, it's like, now shit, like now I got to figure it out, right? Because like he had this plan, right, that he kind of set in motion for me. But
Totally.
you know, I am happy that I am because I've learned so much about myself through the journey, that I am stronger than I actually thought I was, right? Like I don't need to rely on others for my happiness, for my success. Like I can do it, right? And so, yeah, I think the entrepreneurial grind is not for everyone. I think that's like a real heart check to be like, when it's the mud, right? When you're going through the valleys and the mud, like, do you rise or like do you crumble and like run for help, right? And so it's like sometimes it's good to ask for help. Obviously, I don't mean that, but you know, like, how do you respond to that? So kudos to you. That's awesome. I think all three of us are in that same mindset.
Yeah.
Shout out to you too. I mean, I think that we've gotten to just know each other obviously really, really well. But that's one of the mad respects that I just have for you, because I've gotten to know his family. I've gotten to know the environment a little bit more. And like, you're the black sheep. Like, the reality is like, you definitely made that decision. Yeah. And I got mad respect for you, brother.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Not easy.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about, you know, the focus of the podcast. It's called Minutes of Positivity.
Yep.
So it's very much mindset focused. What do you talk about? Like, what do you get into, and kind of what are maybe some of the top 3 kind of topics that you dial on?
So I have different guests on, and each one represents something different. So I just had a professional boxer on there, Willie Monroe, who talked a lot about mindset, boxing, health, and what that's done for him in his life and the trajectory of his life being, you know, having that kind of structure and all that kind of stuff. And he talked a lot about mindset and that, so I loved that. And then I had somebody on there, Bridget Gibson, who talked a lot about just positivity and looking at the world from a different view and what that can do for you. So it's really about Minutes of Positivity, right? It's essentially a big umbrella. And I wanted it to be something where any kind of story could be told, but they're there to tell the story, which is a positive. And no matter how dark or how light it is, like, we all go through things. And so I wanted to provide a space that was safe enough for people to share their stories, so that somebody else could hear it and laugh, which is positive, cry, which is positive. You feel seen, heard, you realize you're not alone, all those kinds of things. And so I guess I wanted to create a space that I wish I had at times.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And so, especially during the times where I felt the most alone, I wish I had something where I, you know, be like, oh, it does get better. And, you know, so I guess I'm just creating what I wish I had. And so Minutes of Positivity is to showcase that. It's to showcase my journey as well, because I've had such an incredible mind shift. And I see the reality of doing that and the benefits of having a positive mindset, what it can do for you in your daily living. And so I just launched, actually, a Moments of Positivity segment where I'll be talking a lot more about that kind of stuff and showing myself more, because a lot of people are like, okay, but we're not seeing as much of you. And so I still have my interviews, which I love doing because I love sitting down and hearing people's stories. But now my story is also going to slowly be shared, and I'm excited about that.
That's really cool. Yeah. So tell us, you went through a shift over really the past year. You said you almost lost like 30 pounds.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming fitness isn't incorporated into that. And then how is that blended into the mindset and the positivity of all that?
So for a majority of my life, have had a pretty nasty gut. I had suffered for years with IBS, and I would have all these colonoscopies, and they would tell me that my colon looks good, and we could never figure out what was wrong with my stomach. And I was definitely one of those people who did a lot of okay, I'll try this diet, and then I would lose weight really fast, and then I would gain it all back times 2. And I was like, what is going on? And I was a college athlete. So what was interesting about that is when I, and I think this happens often, is when I was going into my master's, I gained a lot of weight because I was no longer training for something particular. And that throws your mind off a little bit because you're like, well, I don't need to go to the gym because I don't have to practice or I don't have to play. So it's not really a big deal. And that was a lot. And so then when I graduated, I lost a lot of weight. And then we hit COVID and I gained it all back. And then I moved here and I was probably at my heaviest. And it wasn't until I think I was 25 and I got tested. My cholesterol was at 290.
Wow.
And I remember I was sitting at the breakfast table with my grandparents and my grandfather said, I have to take my medication. I said, oh yeah, me too. I'll grab yours as well. And my grandmother, my grandfather, and I all took the same cholesterol medication.
Oh, man.
And I thought, oh, something has to change.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. So I was put on medication because I needed to get it down quickly. And then I got off of it and I saw a gastro who had a nutritionist attached to the practice so that they could work together on my system and basically restarted my entire gut. And so that was a process. And then I started that in June. October, I quit my job. And then by November, I started to notice, I was like, oh, I'm starting to lose weight. Like, okay, this is working. And I was eating really clean. I was working out like I'd never before. I didn't even train like this in college. And then by February, it melted off my body. And I had to learn patience with it because I realized I was healing my gut. So I knew I had to be patient. It was different than just losing weight. I just got to a point where I said, I just want a healthy body. And whatever I look like, I look like. I just need a healthy body at this point. And I just started making some serious changes and just started changing how I think about it too. I'm like, I get to do this. I get to work out. I have the ability. And it just started melting off my body. And this has been the longest, I think, in my life where I've actually maintained a physique because I did it the most natural, efficient, patient way I could.
You dumped that huge stress too of that job.
Oh,
kind of wearing you down.
That was like 15 pounds. It was like I quit that. I was like, whoa, my clothes fit looser.
Yeah, your body started functioning on a more like optimal level for sure. And people don't realize how much stress affects the gut, right?
Totally.
So when your body's stressed, it's like, let's not worry about this. Let's just like keep the lights on right now, you know? And it's not going to handle all the other stuff that needs to be addressed. So
yeah, that survival mode is crazy. And what it does to your mind and your body. There was a moment where I thought I was just never going to not live without feeling anxiety. And I started to really, I was working with my life coach and I said, something has to change. I'm in shambles at this point. I'm spiraling. I quit my job. I'm doing all these things, but I'm actually not doing anything. It was almost like I needed a little bit of time to be, I don't want to say rebellious, but I needed.
What's sexually?
Just got nice and.
We'll have to oh, there we go.
We got time though.
Didn't know that was auto timed.
That's funny.
I didn't know we were being that still. Yeah. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
That's good.
But there was a time period there for a minute where I think I needed to be a little bit rebellious. Because I went to college. I was a college athlete. I danced in college. I was an RA. I then went immediately after, got my master's. Immediately after that was in a big girl job and was doing all these things. I never got to just rage, you know? Like I feel like I finally got to be a 20-something-year-old. And I was working in the restaurant industry and I just kind of did that. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, I don't like how all of this feels.
Unsustainable.
You know, and like, I can't do this. I'm surrounded by people. None of this is making something. And so I started reading this book, Positive Intelligence, and that changed everything for me. It's such an incredible book. My roommate says I should be the poster child for the book. And I would agree with that. because it did it. My life coach told me, you need to read this book. It's time. And I read it. And the first chapter I texted him and I was like, so this is a personal attack and I don't like it. And he goes, you call me when you're done. And it was like I had to reintroduce myself to him. It changed my entire mindset. And then things started happening. I quit that job and went to a different restaurant industry or different restaurant job. And the way that I treat that job is way different than the one I used to. I started really putting myself out there. I was doing a lot more things with acting because I was in acting school for 2 years, actually 3 years, and still am. And so I just like, the ball started actually rolling. And so as much as I was taking care of myself, I wasn't taking care of myself. And then I started to really put all of that stuff in motion. And I remember one day I just sat down on the couch and it was still. And I started crying. I was like, why am I crying? I'm like, is it that time of the month? Like, why am I crying? I felt peace. And I realized I hadn't had anxiety for like 3 days. And I was like, it is possible. It is possible to live without that survival mode 24/7. It's not normal to live in that. And now I live 80% in peace. And so when I am anxious, I know exactly what that feels like. I know where it sits. I know why. And I just have so much more control over my health, my mental stability, my spirituality, everything. And it just all somehow like came together. And now I feel ready to take on my career differently, my health differently, and keep doing that because I feel prepared. Whereas like last year, I was like, I'm not prepared. Why did I quit my job? I'm not prepared. But I needed that year to just kind of go batshit crazy for a second. So that I needed to go as, honestly, I had to hit like a rock bottom, a version of that for me to go, okay, it's time to wake up.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But we talk a lot about like the pillars of life and like having balance in a way, right? If you're super focused in your career, that's a good thing. But if it starts to suck from other areas, right? Your fitness is low or you're unhealthy there, or your mindset is crap, but you're super fit. Like that's not proper balance, right? The body, it's an unsustainable thing. You got to have all these things kind of in check, right?
Yeah.
So we're very focused on that. So it sounds like that's kind of what you went through. It's like you were like, all right, like this thing's good. This is shit. Like this is good. Like, how do I stack the
It was
box?
like nothing was aligning.
You know?
Everything was,
right.
I would get something really good and then something else was really in the gutter. And I was like, how are any of these gonna align?
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel the most balanced. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I can handle anything at this point. I'm like, I got it.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
There's a book that I just finished reading. It was Play a Bigger Game. But he was basically talking about, we have pillars that we essentially work on and we kind of live by in terms of our core values, Alfred and myself. But he gave a good context of it. And it's exactly what you were saying. There's burners, right? And so there's burners that you put up, and then there's also burners that you kind of like temperature down. They're not off, but they temperature down. And so it's this concept of we're in a season of business is business right now. So like it's very hectic. But then there's also what burners can you have at like a relatively high heat, but then not sacrifice other things. And so for me, yeah, my priority, like my health is very much priority. And so I focus, like that burner's relatively high right now. I wouldn't say it's at its highest because when we're working out, it's 45 minutes to an hour and we're done. Like we're jacked, but people don't realize like we put in the intention of the workout. We talked about this in the podcast of just being super intentional with our workouts and then
Right.
we're out, right?
Right.
And then we're back to work. So you would think on Instagram, though, the way we post, we work out all the time. That's not the case.
Yeah.
So we're like hyper-focused with our workouts. We're hyper-focused with our nutrition, but we got kids at the end of the day. And so in the season of life, that burner's really hot.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm not going to miss out on their life. Like I got 3 girls, and I'm not going to miss out on the seasonality of that because I know that Genevieve's going to turn 18. I know that not this year. She's 8 right now, but she will be 18.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And so it's like putting that in the spectrum of where that heat check is. Whereas when she's probably 15 or 16 and she's hanging out with her friends, and I'm not the most important in the world person anymore, like things do dial differently and the burner comes on differently, right? I might choose to do an Ironman during that time frame because like I have the capacity to really dial in some training. I'm not going to do that right now because I know the training that takes.
Yeah.
And so it's these burners that you can put on. Of course, when you're single and you have like the maximum capacity of time, there's a few burners you can put on. Yeah. But I thought about that process of like being able to temperature check those burners of what we say no to and what we say yes to.
Right.
And then being able to, put it at a high heat, then put something at a relatively low heat. But when you can pull those strings, you become well optimized.
And on that point, dude, like pulling the strings, like how do you elevate one without sacrificing another? And I think that's where it comes to like those efficiencies that you put in, or like tactile things that you can do to make the workout less time expensive so that you can free up time for other things without sacrificing the benefits of that workout, right? And that's what we talked about with Jerry, was like circuit training versus, traditional bodybuilding, sitting on your phone for an hour and a half. Like people who are like, yeah, I go to the gym for 2 hours. I'm like, wish I could. Love the gym. One of my favorite places on the planet. Don't have the time to do for 2 hours, right? So like 45 minutes, get it done, like hyper focused, hyper efficient, free up some time. Still got a great workout, probably better, right, than an unfocused workout.
Totally.
And now there's more time for something else. So now I can elevate multiple pillars at the same time, right? Now maybe I have another 30 minutes. I could probably read a half a book in that amount of time, right? So, and then also, right, like you talk about with like the Jim Quick method of speed reading, or like focused speed reading, where I can get through a half of a book in like a morning. You know what I mean? And like that, if I didn't have that tactile thing. So let's do this. For like the mindset thing, give us a couple ways that you like focus on, maybe with like your guests or just in your personal life, like tactile things that you do to shift, say, mindset into that positivity, right? To free ourselves from getting burdened.
Yeah. So things I do for myself that have helped, I will say, in setting boundaries too, because I think I call myself a recovering people pleaser, because I loved helping everybody else, and I would take on this. I'm like, I'm this martyr. Like, I put everyone before me. Okay, that's crazy. Just so you know, that's not how it, you have to put yourself first so that you can be the best version for these people. Agreed. And so I learned that the harder way. But here we are. So some things I do to make sure that I'm efficient for my day is when I wake up, like most people, I don't go on my phone. That is just my thing.
I don't think that's like most people.
Well, I think
means most people go on their phone.
Yeah. Is that what you meant by that? Okay, got you.
And I also think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't go on my phone, but then they're posting that they don't go on their phone. Yeah. You're like, wait, I'm confused.
Yeah,
wait, you're on your phone. But I don't go on any social media till I give myself till like 9 a.m. because I'm usually up before that. Love that. And so I give myself till 9, and sometimes it's past that because I'm already distracted and doing other things. I've really enjoyed journaling lately. Over the last year, as I was transitioning out of that like chaotic stage, I started to really tap into journaling and being honest with myself. And I have a separate manifestation journal. So they're very different ones for just my thoughts. And the other one is to speak kindly to myself. And I do that. I speak very kindly to myself. I always say, like, last year, no one could speak worse to me than I did. And now no one can speak kinder to me than I do. Because I think it's just shifting your dialogue in your head and understanding whose voice is speaking at the time in which, because we all have a judge. Like, is that your voice or is that someone else's projection? And so I am very mindful of the way I talk to myself. I'm very mindful of the way I talk about myself to others. And I also don't do anything with anybody until after 10 a.m. So if I have a doctor's appointment, it's not till after 10. I don't schedule anything before 10 a.m. So that allows me to either have a slow morning if I need it, or get a workout in, or go for a walk, or do all the things that just allows me to be with myself before I then go ahead and entertain anyone else. And I try not to take phone calls or anything before that as well. So like, I really have focused on sitting with myself so that I can be better for when other people, come to me. I have enough energy to navigate them. But a lot of things that people have come on to my podcast and have talked about in terms of mindset have all been around the dialogue in which we talk to ourselves.
That inner monologue,
yeah, and how much of a difference that has made. And something that I've adopted is the thank you more, please. And it's where when something good happens to you, someone compliments you, if you get a new patient, if, whatever it is, if it feels good, you say thank you more, please, which allows that energy to go out to the universe or whomever you believe in, God, that you are acknowledging the gift that was just given to you and that you would like more of it. And I'm telling you, that has changed my perspective, because now I'm seeking for those moments. And I started to just adjust my brain. I'd wake up and I'd say, like, today is a great day. And I'm going to have a great day. And I'm going to make a lot of money at work today. And when I would get a good tip, I would say thank you to them. I'd walk away and I'd be like, more, please. And then I'd get another tip, and then I get another. And it was because then all of a sudden my energy changed, because now I'm seeking that positivity. I'm seeking that high vibrating energy without realizing I'm the one that's putting it out there.
Yeah.
And so I've had people say to me, like, I've had people say, like, I struggle sometimes being around you because you operate at such a high vibration.
They're not vibrating as high as you are. Yeah. And they, like, what does, like, Jay
Talk about this
Campbell
with Jay
talk
Campbell,
about
yeah.
is, like, they can't like see you, or they can't they can't like pick up on, right? Like they feel threatened, or they feel like, that's when people like judge, right? It's they feel like whoever they're judging, they're actually jealous of, and that jealousy is such a low vibration. They're so down here,
Well, I think too, when you make shifts in your life and the people around you, it puts a mirror to them. And if they don't like the reflection, they're going to come at you. And I've had to deal with that. I've had to adjust to the fact that, a lot of it's not about me. That's about them. They must feel some type of, they're looking internally and don't like something. Because I've done that, where somebody's done something or said something and I'm like, ooh, should I? And now all of a sudden I'm insecure. And so I think that when I stopped looking at everybody else, or stopped looking for all this validation, and just started to look within and decided, what kind of a partner do I want to be? What kind of a friend do I want to be? And deciding the kinds of energy I wanted to attract, I just started becoming that energy. And then as a result, I have attracted some of the best people. I've had some great networking events. I've done some really good acting things, because I think now I just operate in that energy, and I'm not going to apologize for operating in that energy, because you don't know what it took for me to get there.
Yeah,
Have you ever read the book by Stephen Hawking's Power versus Force?
I've heard of it.
Oh man,
I've heard of it. I'll look that up for sure.
You're basically speaking the alignment of that, but like they took, it was graded out on a scale, right? And so you take Jesus, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and then the vibrations of frequency at which they operate, and like Jesus is near perfection, or perfection,
of course,
so like 1,000, right? But then the vibration of frequency was like on a scale of 1 to 100, and then Hitler was like in the 100 to 200s, but he did his like through force, right? And then they gained their power through the laws of attraction, so like the laws of which they vibrated, right? And they built that off of it. But he talks about, I mean, it's a dense book, so if you read it, it's dense.
You're not speed reading that.
You're not speed reading that one, no. But it's dense. But it encapsulates like some of the thinkers, right, of what Gandhi did and how he, you know, he started out as one, and then like what was it, like 10,000 people were around him when he reached the sea. And then Mother Teresa, on how like that attraction occurred because she was just there. And so she was operating at like 750. Majority of people operate, like I think he said that the United States operates in this 300 to 400 range, which is like kind of that borderline negative mentality versus like they're slightly positive,
like
you know what I mean?
Right? It's survival.
It's survival. It's complete
Totally.
survival.
You're alive.
You can now have,
you're breathing.
you can now have power though, like when you operate low. So he was just given an imagery of Hitler, on how like you can have that power, but there was no joy in that. Right? You're just massacring people. I'm actually reading the book right now by oh man, I'm drawing a blank on the name. Really good, A Man's Search for Meaning. And it was basically this doctor in a concentration camp that takes you the entire way through it. But what kept him alive was the fact that he had a vision of his wife and meeting his wife again and embracing her. And it's like, it's a really like, it's a brutal story.
Yeah.
Like you can just feel it, but the vibration at which he operated was allowed him to go through. Whereas some people, they didn't know when the end would come in terms of the war. And they were, how the Jews killed themselves, they would run into electric fences. And so there was a couple days before they were liberated, there were people killing themselves because they just didn't know the end. But it's anyways, the point is like, you get a choice to live at that frequency.
Yes.
And so like that choice is a day by day, and those thoughts compound in terms of that level of positivity and the power of self-talk. I take it back to this, like what kind of, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think Michael Jordan did a lot, not that I'm comparing myself to Michael Jordan, but I think Michael Jordan, maybe a little bit of Kobe Bryant did this, but like they had a chip on their shoulders. Like they were like, look, I'm going to be the greatest. And like, you're going to, then they forced the greatest around them. But like for me, when I started out, it was always like, I was thinking back to like people that I'm like, they want me to fail. So I'm going to get after it. Like I'm going to just get after it, right? Because I know they want me to fail. And so like, there's that chip that might be good, but then at the end of the time, is there joy in the presence of that? What vibration are you talking, like you're talking about as far as what your frequency at? And so now my mindset is completely shifted, similar to yours, where the way I speak to myself is I give myself authority. I give myself like that, like, yes, I can come in. I am an alpha, but at the end of the day, I can let other people lead. I can step down and I can say, hey, dude, I want to elevate you. And that is like one of the, I mean, you get so much from that service when you can elevate somebody. So anyways, for what it's worth, I read a lot of books.
Yeah, no, I want to pick your brain on that. I would agree. I think there was a time too where I was just like, well, I'm going to do it because everybody else thinks I can't, you know? And I think to some degree, it's okay to use that energy to fuel you at times. Right now, it's interesting. I recently wrote in my journal that I want to do it for the time period that I didn't think that I could. Like, I want to do it for the version of me that didn't think that I could, that questioned whether or not I was strong enough, capable enough, resilient enough. I want to prove to her that I can, because I can see my future self. And I talk to her. I sit down with her and have lunch with her often. And I'm like, so how are we doing? What do I need to be doing right now? You look great, by the way. You know, like I will talk to my future self because I know that she is waiting for me. And I'm just trying to be as present as I can because I'm also acting like her, what I think my future self would be doing. And it's sometimes just those baby steps. Like I want to be able to read my book in the morning, you know, one day before my kids wake up. And just practicing those habits now. I'm not saying that I will do it every day. I know that life is life, but I'm creating healthy habits that I didn't have growing up.
That's right.
And I'm creating a lifestyle that essentially I I see for myself. And so I think it all started when I just switched my dialogue and even talking. I did a photo shoot because I do modeling stuff as well. And I did a photo shoot, and my photographer and I were talking, and I loved every photo. Now, there was a time in my life where I would have hated every photo except for maybe one. I loved every photo. There were 2 photos that were not flattering. So I sent them to him and I said, hey, I love all the photos, including these, but these are my least favorite. He said, why? I said, because the angle in which I'm standing is not flattering to my body. So if we could just use some of the other ones, that would be great. And he was like, yeah, no problem. And just that difference in the way I would have said it a year ago, I would have been like, first of all, I look, and I would have just destroyed myself. Yeah. When all it was the angle of the photo. And so it's just the way I speak, not only to myself, but when I'm talking to others about myself. And I had someone say to me, how do you get like that? I said, get like what? They said, do you really love your body? I said, yeah, I do. I said, and I loved it. You know, I've learned to love what it used to be too, because it got me through a lot of things. I didn't think that then, but, you know, and they said, and I think that there's a misconception that because I lost weight, all of a sudden I'm, you know, don't have any type of dysmorphia, or I don't struggle with body image, or it, you know, I don't have still the mindset there. However, I said, yeah, I do love my body. It's healthy, and I get to work out, and I have the privilege of doing that, and I get to walk, and I get to work and do all those things. And she asked me, how do I get there? She goes, do you just trick your brain? I go, you literally have to trick your brain. Yeah. And just like working out, you practice that every day. And I do believe that the way that I train and the way I work out, and going when I didn't want to, and being able to lose weight but also maintain it and get through the mind shift, is what's going to get me through my career too. Because at the toughest times where I'm like, I don't want to be an actress, I don't want to do this, I'm like, no.
You're resetting all these patterns that you had since you were super young. I was saying, I was a super insecure kid too, and you had to kind of just like overcome these things, right? And there's still times where I'm like, oh man, I gotta get more jacked, right? Like, you know, like, but for me, it's more of like the feeling of it. But one thing I wanted to kind of touch on was something that has been super impactful in my life, and that I've learned, is that when you serve others, that vibration is so high that like it like can't help but deliver you stuff, like, right? And so like when I got into, you know, the field that I'm in, where I'm a doctor but I'm also this entrepreneur, and I have to keep this business running. So there's that fine line between, I am serving people, but they pay me money to do so. Yeah. You know, you can be having a lower month or something, and you're like, all right, we got to collect some money. So let's get people in the door, and let's get people in these care plans and stuff. And like that just focuses so much on the numbers that you stop serving people, and it all goes downhill. Right. And so like that mindset shift has always been for me, is like, all right, where are we? Like, doesn't even matter about the money. I'm going to serve this person in front of me to the best that they deserve. Whatever they choose to do, they'll choose to do. And what they end up choosing to do is pay me a lot of money to help them get better. And it's because they want to, and they realize that the truth of it is that like, I'm just focused on like helping them. You know what I mean? And like everyone in our clinic too. And so I have to like always bring that back to bring back to home, is because like that's what got me through like some hard stuff in my life too. Was like, stop focusing on myself and my pity party and that, and just go serve other people. And like, you can't then focus on the negative because you're so focused on that. Yeah. And it's massive.
And I think too, like, I mean, I'm doing this podcast, and I'm not making money necessarily. I'm not making any money off of it, and I'm still choosing to do it every day. And I'm like, okay. I know one day that will all come, and it's still bringing me joy. So that just tells me like I'm on the right path, because all you ever want to do is wake up and be happy. And I wake up and I'm happy and I'm grateful, and
you're doing good work.
That's all. Yeah.
So what's next? What's next for Minutes of Positivity? I know I'm coming on, so
I know I'm excited about that. We have to set that up. That was going to be great. Minutes of Positivity. I'm excited for this new launch. I'm focusing on getting those little moments of positivity out there, and hopefully getting some more of my modeling and acting gigs. Cool. So I see it. I know, you know, if I quit now, I'll realize how close I am. So I'm
We won't let you.
I'm not ready to do that.
You.
So we're
We'll
doing it.
Tell our audience where they can find you, find the podcast,
Yes.
Instagram, website.
So Instagram mine is Alexa Nejaime. It's just my name. Minutes of Positivity has its own page as well.
Okay.
And then you can find me on TikTok and YouTube by clicking just Alexa Nejaime.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me. This has been great. Thank you for having me.
It's going to help a lot of people. So,
yeah.
As always, this is Full Fueled. And it is affectionately, season 2 is going to be sponsored by Lessee Functional Health.
That's right.
So if you need the best chiropractor in Tampa Bay, check us out.
Welcome to the Full Fueled Podcast. I'm going to set what the new normal looks like in my life.
You're not limited by your genetics.
You have a superpower that is lifting people up.
So unfortunately, most businesses aren't going to use the highest quality ingredients.
What's your approach?
Dude's jacked.
I know he's jacked. That's why I'm asking
I
him
don't
how he
think he
trains.
I don't think he lifts.
Yeah.
Consistency in everything that we do that really compounds. The only way we're going to get the word out is with you. Live full fueled, live beyond limits, baby.